If, like me, you're old enough to remember life before the internet, you'll know how profoundly it's changed our lives. More importantly, it's altered the structure of how we live in ways we rarely stop to reflect on. Because the internet didn't just give us email, websites, and social media, it quietly rewired how we connect, work, learn, see ourselves, and even experience time. And like every major technological shift in history, it's given us extraordinary gains. That's why we adopted it. But it's also removed valuable things along the way. So in this video, I want to zoom out and map 10 ways in which the internet has changed humanity. Not to judge it or to romanticize the past, but so we can paint a clear picture of what's happened. Because once you see the impact the internet has had from a bird's eye view, the complexity of modern life becomes much easier to understand. Okay, so the first set of changes I want to explore relate to connection. On the face of it, this is an obvious area the internet has impacted, but the nature of those impacts are often far from obvious. Until the internet was invented, geography defined our world. Our culture, job opportunities, social circle, and access to knowledge were all constrained by physical distance. But the internet dissolved that pillar of society in just a few short years. Suddenly, someone in rural England could connect with someone in Tokyo just like that. Ideas could spread globally in minutes, and people with niche interests could find one another across continents. We don't consider the ground-shaking impact that's had often enough, but we should, because it's extraordinary. The internet's ability to join people across the planet brought us closer than ever in ways we couldn't have imagined before. But when geography collapses, other things shift too. Local identity becomes looser, global competition increases, and cultures blend, often beautifully, but sometimes in ways that flatten the magic of diversity. So clearly the internet has given us access to the world, but it's also removed some of the structure that once held our place within it. In the pre-internet world, mass communication required infrastructure. Resources like printing presses, television studios, and radio towers were needed to convey information and content. And because these resources are expensive, there were gatekeepers, people who decided who got to speak to the masses. To a large extent, the internet has dismantled that system. Today, anyone can publish and anyone can broadcast. Anyone can try to build an audience. That democratization has unlocked creativity, opened up journalism to anyone, and given birth to independent learning and new businesses. This change has been really powerful. It works. You wouldn't be watching this now if it didn't. But it's important to remember that as with everything in life, the benefits we gained came at a price, because it's also eroded traditional and sometimes quite useful markers of authority. Expertise and opinion now sit side by side on the same screen and the same platform, often indistinguishable as we consume them. So the internet has given each of us a voice, but it's also muddied the waters and raised questions over who we can trust. There was a time when millions watched the same television programs, read the same newspapers, and tuned in to the same cultural moments. It was far from perfect, but it did enable shared experiences. The internet has replaced this with a landscape of infinite niches. Algorithmic feeds, personalized timelines, and parallel conversations are now the norm. Today, two people living next door to each other can inhabit entirely different informational worlds. Most do. It's essential to recognize the good and bad in this change. The fragmentation of what we consume has enabled communities for people who were once isolated. But we can't ignore that it's almost removed the possibility of a collective reality. So the emergence of micro-communities has given millions of people belonging. But in doing so, we've also lost some synchronicity as a society. Social media has introduced a subtle but really powerful psychological shift. Before, fame belonged to celebrities, distant figures we were exposed to through formal, structured platforms like TV and cinema. Now everyone can curate and publish their lives for public consumption. Our highlights have become our narrative, our moments have become public content, and for many, identity has become performance. Now, this has obviously facilitated creativity and self-expression at scale, enriching society in countless ways. But it's also blurred the line between lived experience and performed experience. So we've gained visibility, but we've also lost a degree of privacy and invited the pressure of constant comparison into our lives. The second category we'll explore relates to structure. It's about how the internet reorganized labor, information, and value. Work used to be geographically tethered. You went somewhere, clocked in, and stayed local. But the internet changed this by detaching knowledge-based work from location. As a result, global collaboration has become normal, digital entrepreneurship has become viable, and global talent pools have opened. This has increased flexibility and opportunity, making work more fulfilling for many. But it's also introduced new pressures, global competition, always-on expectations, and fuzzy boundaries between home and work. This change has enabled us to gain mobility in where we do what we do, but it's also eroded the separation between our personal and working lives. For centuries, knowledge wasn't universally accessible, and perhaps more importantly, it was institutionally controlled. Libraries were slow physical databases, courses were local, and achieving expertise was expensive. The internet has dismantled that structure. Things like Wikipedia, YouTube tutorials, and discussion forums have changed the game. Self-education hasn't just become possible, it's become easily accessible. That's perhaps one of the great achievements of the digital age. It's opened up information and knowledge to anyone who can get online. But when information becomes infinite, new problems arise. The wealth of information we now have access to needs to be curated and checked for accuracy, because an abundance of information is overwhelming, and the sheer scale of the informational landscape has become difficult to navigate. In this sense, the internet has provided people with access to knowledge, but it's also made it harder to understand what truly matters. This one is structural, and it's had a far greater impact on society than most people realise. The internet hasn't just connected us, it's monetized our attention. The speed and scale of the internet meant that human focus quickly became a commodity. As a result, platforms now relentlessly optimize for engagement, and algorithms prioritize attention-grabbing content. A side effect of this is that metrics have come to quantify value in ways that previous societies would have found quite unusual. Of course, there have been big upsides. This landscape has created free services, incredible tools, and platforms that improve communication and experience. Webmail, social media, and video streaming services like the one you're watching on right now. But this shift has also reshaped our behaviour significantly. Today, outrage spreads faster than nuance, emotion outperforms balance, and speed is prioritised over depth. Put simply, we've gained convenience, but our attention has become a fiercely contested territory. The final category covers changes at a psychological level, and while less visible, they're arguably the most profound. Before the internet, cultural shifts took time. Trends emerged slowly, movements gathered gradually, and news travelled at a fairly pedestrian speed. Now, ideas go viral overnight, redirecting our focus and reshaping what we think almost instantly. Memes alter our language in weeks, and moral consensus can swing in days. This responsiveness can mobilise positive change quickly. In fact, it's responsible for making society much more accepting, much more accommodating, and a much more inclusive and nicer place to exist. But it's also introduced volatility. patience is rarer, cycles of outrage quickly intensify, and our societal memory has become quite short. The consequence is that we've gained momentum, but we've also lost some of the depth and long-term perspective that existed in a slower pre-internet society. Our brains once needed to retain a lot of information just to get by. Phone numbers once lived in our heads, directions were memorized, and essential facts were retained. But the internet has allowed us to outsource memory to digital infrastructure. We use search engines, access cloud storage, and rely on digital reminders to run our lives. This has been a liberating force because it frees our cognitive bandwidth, but it's also quietly reduced our ability to remember things unaided. When the retrieval of information is instant, mental storage becomes optional. So we've gained a great deal of informational efficiency, but in doing so, we've changed our relationship with knowledge itself. This is what I see as the silent change, one that few mention, but is responsible for some of the deepest changes in our character. The internet removed waiting, letters became instant messages, and shopping became a click. Research has become quick searches, and entertainment is delivered at the speed of light. Friction has disappeared from so many areas of life, and we obviously see this as a good thing. We now get what we need or want more quickly. Friction is, after all, inefficiency. But friction also creates reflection. Waiting creates anticipation, and boredom allows us to have an imagination. Perhaps most importantly, effort creates meaning. And the internet has removed a lot of effort from our lives. So this gift has given us incredible speed, but we've all but lost slowness in many areas. And that's had ramifications that reach much further than we appreciate. The internet has proved itself to be an exceptionally powerful force. It hasn't ruined humanity, but it also hasn't saved it. Instead, it's rewired it. It's rewired society. It's rewired us. It's compressed space, time, and hierarchy and expanded access, but it's also fragmented experience. It's democratized our voice, but it's also commercialized our attention. And like every major technological shift in history, it's reshaped our behavior in ways we're still trying to understand. There's little to be gained from being nostalgic about the pre-internet world, but there's equally little to be gained from blindly celebrating the post-internet landscape we've created. What really matters is awareness, because unless you understand the structural shifts we've seen and are still seeing, you can't navigate them properly. You can't choose when to accelerate or when to disconnect. You can't properly understand what to publish and what should remain private. In conclusion, the internet has clearly changed humanity, quietly, comprehensively, and irreversibly. And so I think it's important to continue exploring what that means for us now and in the future. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. This video was based on my writing over at layeredfuture.com. If you'd like to explore the full article or browse through other topics, you'll find it all there.